Hey, thanks for joining us today. Really looking forward to jumping into this topic with Jason and Eddie. These guys are helping a lot of people these days who want to have trust set up through a new platform that we're introducing here at IND. My background is as a trust and estates attorney, and part of the vision when we set up IND years ago was to bring together the permanent life insurance and merge that with the trust and estate planning. Let's do a quick introduction, and then we can dive into the meat of introducing this program.
Great. So my name is Eddie Schott. I live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and I'm a licensed life and health insurance agent. Also registered as an instructor with a nonprofit called Adult Financial Education Services. And we do a lot of Medicare and insurance needs for the 50 and up population. In doing so, we find the vast majority of them keep asking us questions about, what do I do about a trust? How can we do a trust? So we have sought out this solution, and it is working excellent for our clients.
My name is Jason Herring. I'm also here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Been in the industry for almost 15 years now. Done a lot of focus around estate planning, wealth transfer, working with people to figure out and maximize and try to figure out what's the best way to get assets to the next generation.
For many years, we were searching for the right solution here at IND, and we're happy to have found the Family Estate Docs platform. So let's jump into this. I want you guys to walk anybody that's interested in potentially doing a trust or just wants to learn about it. Let's walk people through and introduce the program.
We do this presentation a lot to live audiences, and we hold local workshops here, get 25 to 40 people in a room, sit down and talk to them. And what we find is most people are intimidated about going out and getting their trust done. They think it's going to be a long, lengthy process, very expensive process, and a lot of hours spent in the lawyer's office. And using our platform, we're able to do a simple interview with you, ask you some questions in plain English, not legal language, and it allows our system to tailor a plan to your needs. Okay. All the documents are then prepared by estate planning attorneys and produced. Then we get back with you and do a signing party, we call them. So we, walk you clear through from A to Z through the trust process.
It's really a phenomenon that's happening in the trust and estate world where people are going online, getting their trusts and inputting the information into a format. Then the trust creation happens as a matter of decision tree software. So just want people to understand that.
And that's the comment that we get from everybody, is that when we walk them through the process, it became non-intimidating anymore. It became a nice, simple process. It accomplishes what they are looking for, and that is, protecting their assets and being able to pass them on to their next generation. Okay, so some of the other really neat features of this platform is that you have unlimited access 24/7, that you can log into your own portal once all the documents are prepared. Let's say you are on vacation someplace and you needed your healthcare directives for some reason. You obviously don't pack them around in your backpack all the time. So you can jump on a computer, log onto the portal, and actually download those documents if so needed. You can also go in and update the documents as life changes. We all have health changes, relationship changes, financial changes, asset changes. And every time that happens, if you are using a traditional method of a trust, you're going to have to go back to your attorney and pay them again to redo these documents. And this platform allows you to do that without that hassle.
And it doesn't matter where somebody is in the country, we're able to help them because this is vetted for every state.
Correct. It is licensed in all 50 states. And the other good thing is this process, or the platform, has been around for over 15 years now. So it has had tens of thousands of trusts go through the entire life cycle, I like to call it, to where people have had their documents prepared. They have, had passed away, things have been passed on to the next generation. That generation has went in and had their trust done. So it's a very tried and true process.
You can speak a lot to this, Steve, as an attorney. The unlimited access for lifetime to make changes and restatements, that's huge. And we've already had several examples of people coming in that established a trust, paid a lot of money for a trust, and then to simply make some changes, have to come in and pay, $1,000, $1,500 more for those changes. So we all know that life is going to change. People are going to come in and out of our lives. Our health is going to change. Our financial situations are going to change. And over your lifetime, you're going to have to make changes to these trust documents, and just having that unlimited access.
Yeah, and in my experience, pretty much everybody wants the ability to make lifetime changes. But you're right, Jason, in the industry, the economics of it are the majority, if not all lawyers that I've come across don't want to be available to make changes unless they can make some money on it.
Something that we find very common is that people don't really know the terminology that they're looking at. So a will is just simply a legal document that describes how you would like your property and your other assets to be distributed upon your death. Okay? It doesn't really provide any protection from probate in most cases, or provide a lot of the additional direction that a trust can provide.
Right.
Okay.
I always call it an instruction sheet for the probate court. I think that
Correct. And when you look at a trust document, a will is, in our package is 4 or 5 pages long, and the trust itself, you've got a 75 or 80 pages worth of documents there. So that tells you that the will is really a small percentage of what all goes on or should go on in an estate. Okay?
Yep.
So we're going to talk a lot today about the revocable trust. This allows you asset management during your life, and it allows you to transfer your assets upon death and avoid probate. Okay? The people that don't understand what probate is that's the legal process that you have to go through and follow to transfer or inherit property after the person who owned the property has passed away, if there's no trust in place. Probate can be very expensive, very time consuming, and very taxing on your kids or your heirs, whoever that may be.
The estate of Prince, which is one that was epic from my home state of Minnesota. These are big estates, but nonetheless, it's even worse for a small estate because they can't afford to be put through the process.
We have a client that came in, and she says, I want everything in a trust. She says, I've been dealing with my father's estate here recently, and he had a simple will put into place, and we are now 7 months into the process and $54,000 into settling that estate. And it wasn't anything substantial. It was, a house and a couple savings accounts. So what we'd like to do is walk everybody through and kind of lay out how you can easily understand what your estate really has and who's involved in it. We lay that out by drawing your family tree. A lot of people might look at this and kind of chuckle, but it really works, and it's very easy to follow through your estate documents when you start looking at that. So we'll actually have people sit down and draw a family tree out for us, or we'll help them draw a family tree out.
This isn't going to be one that you're going to see a lot of lawyers doing, I'm going to be honest. So this is value add right here for sure.
Well, and what it is the gentleman that started Family Estate Docs, that this came from him actually. And what he found was he was talking to people, and they didn't realize who was involved, who needed to be involved in the trust. So this was his way of identifying, the key players and the key roles within the trust. So every one of us has a family tree. Some of them resemble a tree, and some of them resemble a bush.
Yeah, unpack that a little more, Eddie. What do you mean by tree and a bush? And that kind
Okay, so we'd all like to, we've all thought of the family tree, and the tree has one trunk, mom and dad, and everything's neat and orderly underneath it. The leaves all, the branches go the right direction, and all the leaves fit properly. And unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in for the most part. There are divorces. There are estranged relatives. There are, combined families that have multiple issues underneath of each family. So that turns into kind of a bush all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, so what's this, before we move on, what's the connectivity thing that we've got over here?
Okay, so these are, if somebody looks at the picture there that has the Mary Gray and stuff, that's a nice, simple family, kind of graph to follow. If you start looking at the picture there on the right, most people, by the time they get one or two lines into it, are just going to give up and look away. And it's not really illustrating family tree, but it is illustrating what a lot of families look like in this world.
The connections and, the different relationships and so
Correct.
on and so forth.
Correct.
Very interesting. All right. Well, are we going to actually draw one of these, Eddie, or what are we going to do?
Yeah, we're gonna take a few steps here and kind of draw one out for you. So, we illustrate this by putting a circle up there. You put yourself in the circle, a name. If you're married, you draw a line off to one side, put your spouse's name in that line. If you've been divorced, we put an X through that line. And that just gives us a heads up of we need to start looking for some other things here.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, if you're a widow or widower, we have not came up with a good way of illustrating that. We keep asking for suggestions. So if you're remarried, we have you draw a line kind of straight up between the two of you, because remarried couples, it typically complicates the estate. It complicates the trust a little bit. And a lot of times you'll have two separate families operating as one. So if your parents are still alive, we have you, kind of go up above you, put mom, dad up there. If you have kids that are born to your relationship, those children would be illustrated off of the line in between you, kind of like this.
Gotcha.
If you have children that you brought into the relationship, you would illustrate that child off to the side of your circle.
Which is very common with blended families nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people would have a family tree that looks something like this, and then you obviously go on down to grandchildren and stuff like that. But this gets you an idea of what we're looking at. And as we walk through this, we'll refer back to this illustration a lot when we're sitting there dealing with a client. The next steps kind of set the stage for the proper distribution when that time comes. It's very important that you identify all those people in that family tree. You know their ages, their addresses, their importance to you, who they are related to. Are they related to both of you?
And you guys take time with people to make sure this family tree is really well thought out.
Definitely, because it explain. If you get the family tree and you follow through the family tree, it pretty well answers the interview process in the trust. I mean, it really almost self-identifies everything. If you think about what currently you have in place, do you have a current will or a trust? If you do, how long ago was it completed? We don't think about that. My wife and I put a will into place, 25 years ago. We started doing a bunch of overseas mission work and decided we better, have something to tell, everybody who's supposed to take care of our kids if we don't come back. And as soon as we did that, it got stuck in the file cabinet, and there it sat for 20 plus years. Now our kids are married, off, out of the house, and we've never updated anything. So when it was completed is really important.
So you have people watching that have trusts or wills or maybe even a trust, and you've been very helpful to people reviewing those plans with them as well.
Correct. Yeah. If you have a current trust in place or a current will, we'll walk you through it. A lot of trusts need updated. They need restated, and we can do that restatement for you. And once we do that restatement, then you have access to restate it in the future for, unlimited access to that. A lot of people say, well, what does my health have to do with my trust? Well, it has a lot to do with your trust, because you might need to do some planning of who's going to take care of you. You might need to do some planning of, if I pass away, and my spouse or my significant other especially lives in the house and shares the house with me, who gets that house at that stage? You know, people forget that if you're not married, for instance, and you co-own a house together, that when one of you passes away, there could be big legal battles there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about why some of these issues that we brought up, and let's try and clear them up of how they're useful within our program. Let's go on a little bit of a journey here. The journey is going to help you select the right people and the place to put them in the roles of your life. Now, unfortunately, this isn't the brightest journey, but it's a journey that we all kind of need to step back and take some time and walk through it. So it's 9 o'clock at the night, and you find yourself in a hospital on a table in a coma. Okay? The doctor doesn't think that you're going to survive. The doctor's going to start asking questions to your loved ones. They're going to say, you know, did they leave any directions behind as to if we are supposed to continue treatment or not? They're going to want to know if you have specified somebody to make these final decisions for you. Once again, you look back at that family tree drawing that we already did, and who would that person be? You know, most people, or a lot of people, if you're married, the first person you're going to look to is your spouse to help make that decision. Okay? Or maybe you've got a nurse or doctor as a child. Maybe they'd be the best one suited for that. Maybe it's a brother or sister, depending on your, circumstance. So let's complicate this little story a little bit. And now what if your spouse was on the table right beside you? Who's going to be your second choice? So everything that we talk about here, we're going to want to put multiple people in place to take care of that one situation. So what we're talking about in this instance is who's going to be your healthcare power of attorney. Okay. And we're not going to choose just one, be it just your spouse, but we're going to have you choose your spouse and maybe one of the children, maybe another sister or somebody else to back them up, because you never know when that person might be in the vehicle that was in the accident with you. Let's say that you survived the accident, you both came back around, but now you're going to be disabled in rehab for the next 6 months, maybe a year. And maybe mentally you're not quite competent yet again, or physically even. So you're going to have to assign somebody in your life to take care of your finances for you, pay the rent, pay the utilities, all those types of things, so that when you do get out of in that situation, you have something to go back to. Now, that same person, would they be your choice to be the executor of your will? Or would you use somebody else out of the family tree to do that? Now, a lot of us are very familiar with the term executor, but maybe not as familiar with the term trustee. Okay, so the will has an executor to it. The trust has a trustee that is assigned to manage it, and it's going to do the same. They're going to do essentially the same job as your executor would have on a will. Okay, so we go back to why are we looking at a trust? Okay. If you have a will or if you don't have a will, in both cases, you're pretty well guaranteed that you're going to go to probate court. Now, every state has limits of what size of an estate that they require probate to go through, or to go through probate. If your estate is not properly funded, or if it has the minimum amount of assets required by the probate law, it will go to probate court. Okay, a lot of states, that amount is very little. It could be, $50,000 worth of assets, and the state would require that estate to go through probate. What's so bad about probate? So, I love, if I've got an audience in front of me, ask everybody, who's been through probate out here? Who's had to take a loved one through probate? And out of everybody that we've ever talked to, I've had one gentleman say, oh, it was no big deal.
Yep.
Well, we get to talking to him just the other day. Come to find out, he lives in a very rural part of Tennessee. His buddy was an attorney, so that he charged him $50 to do the probate. And everybody in town knows each other, so it really wasn't a true probate scenario, But that's the first one that's ever said that it was no big deal to go through. But one of the big, we've got some big highlights here of why to avoid probate. Okay, privacy. The minute that your estate enters probate, it becomes public record. Okay, so do we want the whole public knowing about our estate? It is amazing how many relatives, friends, neighbors, people that you owe money to will come out of the woodwork the minute they see that, you've passed away. The inconvenience. So you'll have a trustee appointed here, and that trustee, would have to appear in court multiple times if it had to go through probate. The amount of time that it takes. I had a client here, she spent 18 months going through probate with her family's farm when her mom passed away. They had to go through and they had to inventory everything. They couldn't just say all the, animal accessories, all the tags for the cattle's ear, all the saddles for the horses. They had to inventory everything on the entire place and prove that to the judge of where it was going. Okay? Took a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort.
And you look at this last point here on the slide, which is the 3 to 10%. That's pretty average. And so you can imagine $9,000. I mean, most people would be thrilled if they can get out of a probate for that. And so it goes 30, 40, 50, 100,000. And for farms and people with those kinds of assets, it's pretty involved and very expensive.
Well, we use the 300,000 here because that's that's the bottom. That's a starter house. You own a home and nothing else. You're going to be at that $9,000 mark possibly.
Yeah,
on the low end.
With real estate values the way they are, for sure.
Okay, so a properly designed and a properly funded revocable trust can prevent the probate from happening. Okay. We keep talking about funding, and we'll get to that here in a few minutes. Let's go back to the roles is what's coming up here. So out of those people in your family tree, you're going to assign some of those people roles in your revocable trust. Okay. The vast majority of the time, that's where these roles are filled from. Every now and then somebody will say, well, I need to, I want a friend to take over being the trustee or something instead of my family, because I don't want my family to have to make those decisions. Okay. So that option is always out there, but we're going to use your family tree and build off of that, and then we can, go from there. So you and your spouse, if you're married, will be the trustors. Some states call this a grantor or a settler. They all mean the exact same thing. The trustors can set and they change the rules within the trust document. They're the owners of the trust. Okay. Regardless of your health, you will always be the trustor. When you and your spouse's life are over, the wishes that you've established in your trust may become irrevocable. Now, we always warn everybody right there, that's a new word that we've used there, irrevocable. Okay. To this stage, we've talked about a revocable trust. Why would we want it to become irrevocable at that stage?
Right.
And as an attorney, you're very well aware of this, Steve.
Once somebody passes, when they have a revocable trust, then that is when a revocable trust becomes irrevocable. And that's what you want, is you want it to be its own entity, right? The person's not there. It becomes its own entity. It gets a tax ID number. There's some steps with that are pretty straightforward. They're much more simple to accomplish than your probate.
One of the major roles in your trust, in your documents, and your estate is to designate who's going to be the trustee. Okay? The trustee is your manager. Okay? It is a very good way of looking at this. The trustee cannot change the rules, but the trustee's job is only to follow the rules to a T, how you have them laid out. Okay? So I will use the example sometimes that if you own the little hamburger shop down the road here, and you want you as the owner want hamburgers cooked for 5 minutes on each side, is it your manager's job to decide to cook those for 3 minutes on each side? And
Right.
That's not his job. You've told him you want it cooked for 5 minutes on each side. Okay. The trust tells your trustee exactly your wishes and how to do everything. They're not there to make new decisions for you.
So the trust is telling the trustee how to cook the burgers.
You will always be the trustor, which is the owner, but you will not always be the trustee. And there's some options of why you might not be the trustee. You might pass away. So at that stage, it's going to become, a successor trustee is going to take over being the trustee for your trust. Okay. Maybe you're starting to have some cognitive problems and your doctor, and, they'll probably get a second opinion on it. Will say, hey, you probably aren't competent anymore to make your own decisions on this. You probably ought to step away from being a trustee. To me, this one would be a little bit nastier situation if somebody in the family actually took you to court and the judge said, hey, you're no longer competent to be a trustee. And that could be for multiple reasons. That could also be, not just health reasons, but I guess that could be other legal reasons.
You could still be deemed incompetent to manage your own affairs without a trust, and it's
correct.
Going to be messier.
Okay. And you also have the option that you might decide to resign as a trustee.
And a lot of times people that have competent kids will do that because they reach a point where they want that adult child to manage their affairs for them.
You will want to choose successor trustees that you trust. Okay, and there again, this is you trust them to follow your wishes to the letter, as you've expressed it in your revocable living trust. Most cases, these are going to come out of your family tree. Very rarely do we see these come from outside of the family tree. So, the third step is to make sure that your wishes are properly funded, both while you're alive and when your life ends. This we talk about when we sit down and talk to you about a trust. We're going to do some review with you, and we're reviewing your assets, and we're reviewing things like your real estate holdings, your long-term care plans, your income plans, your health conditions, your current assets, and maybe your current beneficiaries. And we're going to ask you a bunch of questions about those because the trust job is to protect these assets from going through probate. So if we don't know about the assets, we can't fund them into the trust.
What are you seeing for people not having appropriate plans?
But they think it's going to cost too much to do it. There again, if you look back, you're going to pay a little bit now or a lot later, when you go through probate. They've just not taken the time to get it done. They don't know who to talk to. Well, we've taken care of the problem of who to talk to. We can help you out with that. Okay. Or maybe they're like most of us and they need to be approached by somebody that can help guide them through the process. They're intimidated by it.
Yep. And it makes sense. It's a very complicated area and people want to know who they can trust. One reason is never got around to it.
I use the example at our workshops all the time. We sat here, you just dedicated an hour of your life to come and listen to us talk about this. You get up, you walk out the door. I'm going to call them in the morning and get this taken care of. And you get home and the dog's sick. And you got to take the dog to the vet. So then you get back home. The kids need to go to school the next day. Life goes on. And finally, 3 months later, you think, hey, I wasted an hour going to this workshop. Why didn't I do something about it?
And this goes to our mission here at INDE, which is to help people get peace of mind in making these decisions. There's going to be steps that you can take wherever you're watching the video to move this along and to find out how you can make this work for you, get this done.
Let's talk a little bit about what we offer. Okay, we like to be very transparent in what we offer. The documents that you're going to receive through our program is going to be a revocable living trust, the certificate of trust, a pour-over will. And people ask me all the time, what's a pour-over will? It's simply a will that works within a trust. Healthcare power of attorneys for both you and your spouse, financial power of attorneys for both you and your spouse, a living will, your healthcare directives. Then you're going to have lifetime access to update your information. No additional legal fees. Within the software, there's an online funding kit that is just a wealth of information. You can log into the funding kit once you have access to the software, and it will walk you through every type of possession that you can think of. And it'll tell you, this is something that you just need to, leave to specific people or just leave it in the at part of your estate. or this is something that you need to, get deeded into the
This is
trust.
something where I really believe that you guys and our team here at IND does a much better than average job at helping people understand the funding aspect of it.
So on the funding thing, we have not talked much about the funding part of it, but the funding really comes into, you want your assets protected from the probate, but other things that come into the funding are conversations about, if you might have a special needs child, if you might have somebody that is on a government assistance of some sort, because you can't necessarily leave them assets. You might be able to leave them an income stream of some sort, but you can't leave them assets. So that's something that we need to talk through, that we go through it with everybody.
I did a video a while ago too on special needs planning and how people think that they might need a fancy, ultra sophisticated special needs trust if they have a special needs child. And I wanted to let people know that the platform we have and the majority of the platforms I've seen do have special needs language that can be easily put into the trust. So what you're talking about is great. So you have a life insurance policy, maybe you have a beneficiary be the trust, the revocable trust, and then those proceeds can then be allocated to a special needs trust by the trustee. Kind of cook the burger this long kind of thing, Eddie.
Right.
So, all right, so good stuff. Wherever you're watching, I want to encourage people, there'll be a link below that you guys can schedule with Eddie and or Jason. It'll, I think, be kind of a rotating thing for you guys.
Sure.
So you get either Eddie or Jason, and I'm excited to roll this program out for IND and to support these guys. And if you are scheduling, you not only get the intel that these guys already have, but you get my own contributions to it, and as a team that was founded by estate planning attorneys, there's a special value proposition for you. Knowing that we don't take this lightly, this is something that our desire is to give people the top level of protection with these documents, and with the funding side of it covered as well.